When I think about agribusiness, the first two words that come to mind, of course, are business and business. And I mention that because you might recognize that Ilario Pantano, somebody who was born and raised in the streets of Hell's Kitchen, New York, might not organically seem to have a farming background. But what I recognize as I've been traveling the 7th District, speaking to swine producers and chicken farmers, contract and integrator, is the underlying is the same. Whether we're talking about home construction or agribusiness or pharmaceutical development, there are business climates which can lead to successful outcomes, and then there are restrictions and socialized outcomes that lead to business failure. The reason that I'm running for Congress, folks, is that I think that right now in 2010, we are facing one of the most important elections in our lifetime. And I've decided to enter the fray because I have a history in my life in going to the sound of the guns. When I was a 17-year-old, I enlisted in the Marines for the first time. I fought in the First Persian Gulf War. When I left that service, the Berlin Wall had come down while I was in boot camp. I went on to work as a young commodity. First, I started as a clerk on the floor of the commodity exchange. That should ring bells for folks, since all of the agricultural products, or certainly many, are hedged through commodity instruments. So again, while I didn't spend my life on a farm, I understand organically some of the instruments used to hedge and offset risk. And of course, I appreciate the fact that farmers on a daily, weekly, and yearly basis face a tremendous amount of risk in their business. Some of that they can mitigate with science, some of that they can mitigate with insurance, and a form of that insurance are derivative instruments, and I've traded those, I've worked in those markets, and I understand big markets. I understand how to use big markets as hedging instruments. I understand global supply. I left the Wall Street to start my own business, and I spent time as a small business person, where a lot of the struggles I endured were ultimately things that will endear me to some of the smaller groups in the room. I'm not sure. I think that we probably have representation of some pretty large organizations. But as I travel the district, I'm speaking to men and women that are individual, that are family contract farmers. They have a couple of pens, or in some cases they have several hundred swine, and they've got a facility, but it's a family business. And I've struggled as a family business person. I've made payroll out of my credit card, and again, I appreciate the demands which are universal. While somewhat unique to farming, certainly, there are universal demands, there are universal needs, there are universal opportunities across the business spectrum. So while this might seem a little bit disjointed, I assure you that there are some important parallels. After my time in running my own business, or I should give you a little bit more background, the way that period of time concluded for me was on a fateful morning of September the 11th, when I watched planes go into the World Trade Center. And that actually caused me to shelve and put up my business hat, if you will, and put back on the Marine Corps hat. So I went into the Marine Corps a second time. This gives you a little bit of a background on me as a candidate in front of you, that while I do have some appreciation of how the world, how global markets, how small markets work, I have a deeper appreciation of love of country, and I absolutely believe that there are values and ideas that are worth fighting for and that are worth dying for. And I think that this nation was founded upon them. As I think about what the issues are, thank you very much for flagging me down. As I think about the issues that ultimately challenge our district and our country, I think that there's a lot of parallel. And I've been attacked already by my opponent, and I suspect it won't be over. But I think that the things that are going to be good for this country are going to be the same things that are good for this district. And I recognize that agribusiness is one of the real drivers of the economy of our district. And I also recognize that export is one of the real drivers of agribusiness. And to the extent that you've got a closed mind and trade policy, which is candidly fueled by union dues, and you have a closed mind to monetary policy, which ultimately makes it very difficult for small business people to borrow.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pantano, I think we must move on. She had notified me, so I guess I'm going to have to...
And a restricted tax code that makes it very difficult to operate. These are some challenges that we face uniformly, but please.
Just like a politician, keep it right on.